Welcome to the Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse podcast,
where we bring you hope and inspiration for growth and healing. And we are truly here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
Now, we often talk about things that people don't want to talk about. However, they're important subjects that need to be discussed to decrease the stigma for healing.
And boy, do we like to talk about those things, Mark, right?
Do. Oh,
we do.
My gosh.
So 2021 is the year of the nurse and midwife, as it was last year. And what we've been doing throughout the year is we've been highlighting and illuminating cannabis nurses, nurse practitioners, nursing, medical professionals that are completely 100% stepping outside the box and bringing cannabis education into their lives, the lives of their community, and changing how we take care of patients. So we're in revolutionary times, and we're changing how we approach and take care of patients. So we want to illuminate all of the health professionals out there that are doing this.
Yes. And you know what, Sherri? We don't all wake up one day and just decide to enter the cannabis industry. I mean, there's usually a compelling story behind the scenes. Yeah. So what makes someone enter into the cannabis space as a practitioner? Sherri, will you introduce our guest, please?
Oh, I would be more than happy to. So we're really, really excited to introduce cannabis nurse Fuimaono-Poe. She's a nurse practitioner, founder and medical director of Malie Cannabis Clinic in Hawaii. May has over 20 years of nursing experience and earned her associate's degree in nursing from Penn Valley Community College, her master's in nursing from Hawaii Pacific University, and she is a family nurse practitioner certified by the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners. Since founding since founding the Malie Cannabis Clinic in 2016, she certified over 8,000 patients in the state of Hawaii. I think that's just so great. So because of the political nature of cannabis, May is also involved in lobbying at the legislature and has petitioned the state of Hawaii to add more qualifying conditions for cannabis use. Mm-hmm. She's also presented to the Hawaii Senate, House, and the Attorney General about cannabis and opiate use disorder. At the clinic, May oversees the daily clinic flow. She assesses and certifies patients for medical cannabis use, and she creates individualized dosing care plans based on goals and symptom management. What I really love, like we all do as holistic cannabis nurses, is that she insists on a healthy work-life balance. So while not at work, May spends time with her family at the beach, hiking, gardening, or brunching with her besties. So she's very actively involved in community organizing and organizing all kinds of different types of events. And she definitely takes the bulls by the horn, so she works with several local environmental and cannabis organizations, and she's actively working for an adult use program in Hawaii community that provides justice for those who have been adversely affected by the war on drugs. So May, we are so excited to have you here. I'm sorry if I screwed up the introduction.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Hawaii. What is going on in Hawaii?
Oh, so we have so much. So, Hawaii is the first state to pass a legal medical cannabis program through legislation. All of the first ones were through voter initiatives, right? So passed in 2000. Since then, not a lot of traction. We were able to get a dispensary program, and we've had dispensaries here that have been open since 2016. So fast forward to where we're at today, 2021. So this session has been really, really interesting. We had a really good adult use bill. It made it for the first time through the Senate. Big deal. But of course, everything comes to die in the House. So it has not had a hearing in the House yet. And we had something really amazing happen this session. So we had the dispensary omnibus bill, House Bill 744, which basically gave the dispensaries the ability to wholesale and to open more more locations. No big deal. Nobody really supported it or didn't support it. But one of the amendments that they put in was taking away the rights for caregivers to grow. So this was like
really
a big deal. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And basically criminalizing caregivers by allowing the Department of Health to do more enforcement. So this was the first time that we as a community came together and really organized for testimony. And we had over 3,000 testimonies submitted in opposition, and we were able to get those amendments taken out.
Wow. Now that's a big deal. Because as we know, affordable access is a huge problem in this space. So having a caregiver be able to actually grow medicine for people is huge.
It's huge.
It is. So let's just step back. You got into nursing.
Yes.
I mean, was this a vocation that you chose right from the start? Were you a little girl and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to be a nurse when I grow up"?
So I actually wanted to be a nurse midwife. I went to school to become a nurse midwife, worked in labor and delivery while I was in nursing school, and realized I hated it.
Well, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Labor and delivery and postpartum was my favorite rotation.
Right? And I
loved it.
I was just the opposite. I thought I was going to totally love it. I'd been working as a doula. I'd been doing all of this type of birth work, worked in labor and delivery, and was like, this is not the jam.
Really? Now, see, I loved it, but it's not a space for a male nurse. Like, just going to be honest. It's not a space for a male nurse. A lot of people say, nah, I'm going to opt for May over here or Sherri.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, that's you got in, and then you just kind of get into this nursing groove.
So I was like, I think I would rather work with people in oncology. And so that's honestly how I kind of married the cannabis and nursing together, was through working in oncology.
That was going to be the next question, was how the heck did cannabis enter into this space? Because, you're a family nurse practitioner. You get a lot going on anyway in that job role. How the heck did cannabis all of a sudden appear? And you're super involved in it, right?
Yeah. So, cannabis was definitely before nursing. During the 90s, I was kind of a hippie, and I went on the Global Peace Walk. So this was celebrating the 50th anniversary of the UN, right? So it was from UN to UN. So from New York to San Francisco. So we did the last half of the walk from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
Beautiful walk.
And our after party, our yay, you did it, was hosted by Dennis Perone at the Cannabis Buyers Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. So it was just this lucky, happy accidents of happenstance. And so we have our after party. And during this after party, I met the organizers for the hemp walk, and they were like, hey, you guys just finished your walk. Do you want to finish the hemp walk with us? And so we were like, yeah. And it was
you got your walking shoes on anyway.
Yeah. Right. And I had no clue again. It was just kind of I fell into that, and I was 19. And so that was really where I got into if you're in the cannabis space, you have to be an advocate and you have to work legislatively, because it's the only way that you can really truly shape a just future.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. Getting involved, with what's going on in Massachusetts, and working when you're hands in deep, working with the patients. What do we do as nurses? We find out what they want and need, and we bring it to them. And so, being the advocate and the activist for what patients need, what we're discovering is crucial. And that's how we make changes. And, as nurses, we have a voice. Not only do we have the experience of working with the patients, but we have the science to go along with it. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was your entrance into cannabis. Now, that was prior to your nursing degree?
It was.
And so well, I love this story.
I know.
Like you came, oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
I know.
So you had all this wealth of cannabis knowledge, and then you
decided
go
to be
to
a
nursing
nurse
school and get busy.
Yes. And so, seeing it in, because when my first oncology job was in California, and this was post Prop 215.
Mm-hmm.
So it was medical. And, because it was oncology, it's always been really hard with hospitals. I'm not the first or the last person to say this, but our oncologists were very supportive, and we had a patio. So the code order was may go outside. And that was what the doctors
may go outside. Now, Steve, that's how we have to operate in healthcare, right? There are rules and restrictions, but we know what the patient needs, and so we make it happen.
And so that was our order, and that was, all the way back in 2004. So
wow.
that was kind of a while ago, know, and now, fast forward, we have the legislation in California to, allow patients with, critical, diagnoses to use cannabis in the hospital. So to formalize that process, it's really beautiful to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But we still have a long way to go, don't we?
A long way. Yes. That pesky federal government.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I kind of fell off the wagon here. So I don't know what I missed. So I was having some technical difficulties.
Yeah. You're right in the right place, Sherri.
In the right place.
Damn thing. Oh, we're right in the flow. So we were just talking about how she got into cannabis and nursing, and now, oh my gosh, this is a really good topic this is a great question. May, get ready for this one. Yeah. So you're from a very traditional Samoan Mormon family. So what do they think about you being in the cannabis industry? What is the Mormon stance, at least in your family, maybe, or in general community? Because I have a lot of Mormon friends and been to temple, and so I'm familiar with Mormonism. And so what is it like?
Yeah, so it's been really an interesting journey with my family. So, the first thing I did when I wanted to open my clinic, of course, was I went to them, all of, because my dad passed away. So it's just his siblings that are left. So those are basically the ones that I went to, let them know, asked permission. And this was before we saw all of the legislative changes in Utah. And so they were like, yeah, absolutely. We support what you're doing. And then I think the next year, the church made a huge pivot. And I'm not sure the name of and I don't know if he was a Senate or a House rep, but one of his grandchildren had epilepsy, was treated with cannabis, and it was really helpful. And that was part of what really kickstarted their kind of legislative journey. But what it did first was they changed the church policy. So one thing that, I don't think a lot of people know is that if you have a medical cannabis card and you are Mormon, you can use cannabis and still have your temple recommend, as long as you have your card. So
because it's medically necessary. It's a medicine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of, before we saw prohibition, in the same way that Utah and Idaho grow a ton of hops, Utah and Idaho also grew a ton of hemp back then as well. So there's a lot of crossover historically with the Mormon Church and with cannabis. There were a couple of cannabis medicine brands that were actually produced in Utah. So it's really interesting to see kind of that cross back and forth, and to where we are now, to where there's a lot more acceptance.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The religious concept is just so fascinating too. My story is my mother was very Irish Catholic, and it was a sin. She was, oh my God, I paid for Boston College, and you're dealing drugs. And I'm educating, and how over time, through the education and the storytelling, and we took care of a nun, and we're able to help a nun get off of over 400 micrograms of fentanyl in 18 months. And so basically the nun is a huge proponent. She's given permission. She's been on a couple of radio shows to share her story. And it's really, really important. It's just that change, that shift of perception, that the story of how this plant helped her and how she's living a high quality of life and how it's brought her back to the church, and she's able to serve God again, right? This plant, was able to give her health back again. And so, she's a huge proponent of it. And I think just it's so important, as we decrease these stigmas, that we share these stories, and how, and just bring that kindness and compassion, because it was that nun coming out of the closet, as I like to say, that actually made my mother feel comfortable enough to try this. And now my mother's fully using cannabis. So, as much as we can educate, so that's good that so what is I'm just curious, what does the traditional Mormons feel about adult use, or recreation? And what about it? So I'm curious to know all of the things that they approve, disapprove of.
Yeah, so adult use bills have not passed legislatively there yet, and their medical is pretty limited. So I think it's gonna be a while until they pass over to adult use, to really, see adult use for what it is, which is a huge step forward in social justice. And that's why I will always support adult use, just because statistics show historically, no matter where it's at, it decreases arrests for cannabis. And that's so important.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Yes. I think we could do several shows about the injustices of the war on drugs in general, right?
Absolutely.
We could have that discussion for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I'd really get fired up about it. So we're just going to let that sit right now, because, May, this is your time to shine. We don't want to get a spotlight off on something that we're all passionate about.
Right.
So what do you think is the most important issue in the cannabis industry right now?
Ooh, social justice. Absolutely. I mean,
we couldn't avoid it.
I know.
Talk about it.
Go back. So I think the most important issue that is in the cannabis space is, the people who have really been harmed by the drug war have no representation in the legal space. And it has to be done through legislation. And, we saw Illinois do it. Now they're facing lawsuits. And so it's like doing it legislatively and funding it is crucial and has to be part of every adult use bill, period.
I couldn't agree more. Sherri, what do you think about that?
I completely agree, 100%. Things need to change. It's, it's these grassroots, I talk about it all the time. I didn't learn, my life was not saved by the traditional system. My life was not saved by a book or a webinar or a class on cannabis. It was the grassroots community that took me in. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. Right. Because there was no one, cannabis nursing organizations didn't exist. And we were, and so if it wasn't for the grassroots community and all of their dedication and passion to the plant and knowing with a capital K that this is the right thing to do, that I truly think that we need to be doing more, absolutely, to help this community and to decrease stigma and to make this available, to more people.
Right. Right.
And bringing the communities together. I mean, we were just talking about this on the show with Joe at In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. We had Tammy Sweet on. And so she was talking about going to all of these cannabis conferences about growing and cultivation. And there's these people that are up on stage that have all these research, PhD, this, that, and the other thing, and they don't know anything about cultivation, about grassroots, about history, and how, we're doing a disservice to the industry when we don't bring history and the richness of what people have been through to get where we are today. So.
Absolutely. And automatic expungements, because, California put expungements into their adult use bill, but it's a huge barrier for people to actually get an expungement. And so, like M4MM, Indica, Last Prisoner Project have all been doing these expungement clinics, basically, where people can come. But just creating it like a way that's super easy. Expunging your record for cannabis should be as easy as ordering something from Ease.
Right.
It should be that easy.
It should be that easy.
Or as easy as taking liquid paper.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, the issues are that it's the system that's in place will not allow for that. And the system is inherently built on, what do we know? It's built on race-based, ideology. And, being a white man, I know it's my world. Like, it's a white man's world. Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of privilege just by the nature of me being male and having white skin. So the system's built that way, and it's hard to change. So we just got to keep at it. We have to keep at it.
Right. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking sometimes to really understand the pain and the lives that have been ruined over this silly war on drugs. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless about it.
I mean, well, half the time we have these conversations, I'm just like, really? This is just getting so fucking boring. It's like the same thing over and over and over again. Let's be done already.
We have to have it until it's just so like it's the normal conversation that's in everybody's space.
Exactly. I know. But it's just, it's just like, come on, let's take your time and hurry up. Let's just legalize. Let's just move forward. There's so much work that needs to be done. And until, people at least get in the same library, if they're not in the same page or even in the same book, let's all get into the same library so we can start working together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask too, because about nurses, and this kind of steps into it too. So as nurses, you were using cannabis, before you even went into nursing. So just in your own opinion, what do you think cannabis nurses, or just nurses in general, are facing with their personal use of cannabis? What are they facing?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we have a lot more to lose than most people. Because we can lose our jobs, lose our livelihood, lose our licenses, even though we all know that, the National Board of Nursing has recommended that the states change their policy on that.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it's just implied. There's no pictures of me, using cannabis. There's no videos of me using it that can be used against me. Just because it's like I have a state license, I have a DEA license, so I have a state and a federal license to protect, and so I can also protect my patients who rely on me.
Now, here's the hypocrisy. You can go to any restaurant and take a picture of that fine martini you're just about to drink, and nothing will happen. Yet that is one of the most terrible drugs that has ever been introduced into the human environment, right? We all know it is. It's by agreement that everybody says it's okay to use it. So hey, we're here to bring cannabis medicine, whether it's adult use or medical programs. We all know it's medicine. We're here to just bring
the minute it hits your body, it acts as medicine. You know, it's what is it? The use versus the misuse, right? They're using it appropriately or you're not. And using it recreationally is appropriately if it's going to, you know, increase your quality of life. Because we tell patients all the time? Have a good time. Do something to recreate. Go out. And then we judge them for it. Absolutely not. Cannabis needs to be on the table.
Right, Sherri, right. So, May, let me ask you this, because you're really involved locally in Hawaii with legislation. Like you're testifying in front of all of the politicians, the House and the Senate. What effect does local cannabis legislation have on the possibility of federal legalization?
Yeah, so I think it's huge. And, you know, if the states wouldn't have fought initially, we wouldn't be where we're at. And so one really cool fact, so, you know, if we go way back to the 1970s, the first cannabis legislation that was passed here in Hawaii, and it was a medical program. It was passed, but it was never enacted. That legislation went on to be the framework that was used for the federal act, which, you know, we all know with the compassionate use. That had the 15 patients that had the cannabis sent to them from Mississippi, right? So it would come in, you know, these bad boys.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So the federal government would send you out your cannabis, your marijuana cigarettes. This had 300. They would send them out to you once a month. So this program was based off of that initial legislative piece that was written, introduced, passed, but not enacted here in the state of Hawaii. So, and then it went on to be the foundation for Prop 215, which we know is California's, you know, first and largest legal medical cannabis program that really just exploded throughout the nation. So it's hugely important. It is hugely important.
I agree.
Yeah.
So how about this? Nurses, let's get back to nurses because you're a nurse.
Okay.
So how do you think nurses can make a bigger impact in their communities? What do you think about that?
So I think, you know, at the personal level, when you're working with your patients and you see somebody have cannabis use disorder, I think that you should change it to medical cannabis use. That's one thing that all of us can do with our charting right away, that we can do nationwide in a form of, you know, not really protest, but in a form of solidarity with our patients. Yes. Because being diagnosed with cannabis use disorder sucks. I was diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. I didn't know I was, but I had requested records and I saw it. And I went directly to that provider and I asked them why, and I asked them to change it, and they did. So I think as nurses, when you see cannabis use disorder, I think asking, you know, do you have a medical card? Do you use this? Or even do you use this medicinally, and changing it? Just in solidarity, decreasing because so much prejudice and stigma exists. Still, it's ridiculous.
It is. It really is. It's disheartening sometimes, right?
And we're having a sense of humor about it too. So we're trying to decrease the stigma around having humor.
Right.
And showing people things that, you know, really shouldn't be that scary, right?
Right.
And but educating in an appropriate way with humor, because it's enough is enough. You know, this is a plant that saves lives. It saves so many different people's lives. You know, and as nurses, we are the most trusted profession, right?
Absolutely.
And the National Council, state boards of nursing put out a call to action, big time. All nurses, advanced practice nurses and nursing students must have 6 essential areas of clinical knowledge. So as clinicians, as health practitioners, as nurses, we have an obligation to know this. This is the most important system, and everything that we do or don't do in our lives affects it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's cannabis. That's the part that people don't get.
Yeah. No, for sure. And then,
More than cannabis.
yeah. And the last thing is just testifying on any cannabis bills, that come up, because your input and your testimony is really, really valued. Even if you don't think it is, but just having that it gives you authority. It gives you some authority. So it's really important.
And these things don't change on their own. And, we always assume that somebody else is just going to take care of it and be at the forefront. It's us. We need to be at the forefront. Yeah. And here we are. Yeah.
So speaking of nurses, what advice would you give to nurses who wanted to be part of the industry? What would you?
So I think, with advice to anyone who wants to be part of the industry, it's like find what you love and shine there, grow there. So, for instance, people are always assume that cannabis is just, cultivation and retail, right? That those are the only 2 options. But really, when we look at these more mature markets, like when we see markets like California, Oregon, Washington, it's huge, right? So it's not just, cultivation growers, it's delivery, it's security, it's, graphic designers, it's photographers. So when it comes to nursing and cannabis, I'm like, find your niche. What do you love? And, just focus on that. Like, for instance, you guys, you have the clinic, you have media, right? And so it's really showing that it's like multifaceted, right?
Right.
Things that you can do in the cannabis space, in the communities and dispensaries and all health and wellness places, pop-ups, events. You can write articles, you can do photography, you can be an influencer, you can do radio shows. It's endless.
It's endless.
What lights your fire?
Yeah.
Do that. Do that.
Do that.
Right? Come on, baby, light my fire. So basically, here we go. Here's another good one.
Yeah.
So if you go back into time to opening of your clinic, if you could go back in time when you were opening your clinic, what advice would you give yourself? There you go. What would you give your younger self? What would you?
Yeah. So, I think, so we've been open for 5 years. And when I opened, there was no dosing guidelines yet. Cause some of these major dosing guidelines that we use now, are based on articles that have been published just in the last couple of years. Right. So I think if I could go back, I would definitely say to start with an accountant. I brought an accountant in 2 years later, and I regretted that.
That's a long time without an accountant.
Yes. So I just had QuickBooks and Square and like my regular tax accountant. So I didn't have like an actual business accountant. So I would definitely have started with a business accountant because, 2 years in, we changed from an LLC to an S Corp.
Right.
If I would have had that in the beginning, I would have, not made as many mistakes, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
I can tell you, listen, I woke up from my bed. I had no idea what I was doing. I woke up one day and said, I got to do this. I got to help patients, and you don't you just do it. I mean, it's it's new, it's emerging. It hasn't been done before. I mean, this is new and it's just continuing to evolve. So I call it trial and success. You figure something out, doesn't work. So we're going to make it succeed because that's what we do as nurses, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're in to win. We're in to win
Yes.
when it comes to, working with cannabis and patients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely an accountant. I had an attorney. So I had all of my, all of these, all of my forms were written by attorneys. So I was like protected with my consent. So, an accountant, an attorney, and I think those are kind of like, and a proofreader.
And a proofreader, right?
And a proofreader.
That's a good one.
Because I have accidentally printed 5,000 things that had one misspelling.
Oh my God. We've all done it though, May. We've all done that. It's awful, isn't it? Then you have 5,000 of them. You're like, oh my God, do I put them out there and just say, well, whatever? Or do I reprint?
Exactly.
So I would just reprint. I put them out and I would, correct it.
Yep.
That's so great. So I want to hear more, just a little bit about your clinic and how you work with patients. So say, for example, I'm in Hawaii and I want to come visit you. What can I expect when I enter into your clinic?
Yeah, so, we have really streamlined everything by creating, electronic access. So you can book online, you can book from our website, you can book from Instagram. And then when you book, it gives you instructions on how to fill out the Department of Health. So you do that, you come into our clinic, and then once you're here, it's just kind of, your standard intake form. But, some of the things that I think are unique for our intake form is, it's basic qualifying condition. And then we do like review of symptoms. So, heart, respiratory, gastrointestinal, and then, kind of talking about how long they've had pain, what they've done. But probably the more unique part is we talk a lot about their cannabis use, like how long, have you ever used it? If you've ever used it, have you had side effects? If you've had side effects, what have they been? What symptoms do you want to target with cannabis use? Because they might be coming in for pain, but, they really want to target sleep because it's the pain interferes with their sleep. And then also we always ask what methods they prefer, because when I know their preferred method, then I can really kind of dial in on how I'm going to work on dosing with them. And then my informed consent. So that's the longest part. So it's this page and this page. So it has every single federal and state law on it that affects them as medical cannabis patients. And I have them initial everything. So I think those are kind of the biggest kind of differences. And we have people who, had no idea, for instance, about guns, about the you are not able to have a cannabis card and get a new gun permit. And so, we've had people leave before their appointments because of that. And so I think it's really, really, really important when you're consenting a patient that you are giving them, every single possible bad scenario. I mean, not that it's going to happen.
They have to know.
Could happen. They have to know.
Yeah.
You have to be very honest.
Yep.
And then you see me, I do like a regular appointment, and then we do a ton of education, and this is our dosing guide. And so I do individual dosing with all of my patients based on kind of their preference. And then I send them out with an idea of what kind of product they're going to get at the dispensary and how they're going to use it when they leave.
There you go. That's awesome. Excellent.
Yes.
I
know. So speaking of, I should probably have to wrap up pretty soon. I have a couple more patients, because when I booked this, I didn't take into account daylight savings time.
Well, that's all right.
Hey, this is your time, babe. If you gotta go, you gotta go. You got people to save. Come on.
Yes.
Lives and stamping out disease. That's what I call it.
Yeah, baby. All right. Any last things that you want to add?
Oh gosh, I feel like, you know, for nursing and cannabis, we are truly the pioneers, and we can really build and create this and to be such a positive, huge paradigm shift in our nation. So really, just encourage all of the cannabis nurses to keep at it and to testify at your legislature.
Yes, absolutely.
Get active. Get active. Get active.
Get active.
Sherri?
Yes.
Any last thoughts, Sher?
Any last thoughts? Well, there's one thing I do want to know, because we talk about this all the time, but we don't really talk about it. And you had it in one of your questions. What's your favorite cannabis strain? We're going to end with
Oh, yes. Okay. So my very, very all-time favorite is a super old school OG one, Durban Poison. That's hands down, bred by Ed Rosenthal, has been crossbred so many times, but the original Durban Poison is so good.
And tell me why you like it really quick, so our viewers.
So I just think that it's very aggressively relaxing.
There you go.
Well, I like those two words together. Aggressively relaxing.
It just forces you to, like, you know what?
You
need to sit down over here, and you're
love
gonna
be okay.
May,
right.
It's been awesome to have you on. I'm so honored to get to know you and everything that you're doing. And I bow to the light in you. Keep going in Hawaii. We're very, very grateful.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. It was so awesome to see you guys.
Right. That's another episode, folks. Thanks for joining us.
And remember what it's all about.
Sherri.
Your best life.
Yes.
Thanks, May.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.